Well, hey everybody. Hard to imagine today is our last day of the challenge, and so excited for everyone that got to participate. Overwhelming that we had 8,000 of you join in, and that's really very, very exciting. I see people are signing on already. So first, let me say thank you, and I think I'm speaking for each and every one of us. We're so delighted that we all got to get together and do something really, really positive this time around. And, can't beat it. I'll be looking for your ideas in terms of what we can do next. And let me just look at one thing. See, we may just, Dave Asprey, let's see. Request Dave Asprey. We'll just say hi to him. And we're going to add in Dave Asprey. He jumped right in. Other ideas in other, for other venues that you want to do. We certainly are going to do more fasting. That's going to be great. Next time, who knows what kind of number we're going to get. Hey, I think I know that guy.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? It's a rainy, rainy day in Muskoka here. We're getting a lot of rain, which we desperately needed. I'm going to move my camera back a little bit here. How are things with you?
You know, it's gray and weird. It's supposed to be July, but it feels like it's February. You know, I'm not complaining, though. I'm on a farm eating grass-fed food that I raised myself. There are worse places to be right now.
Yeah. So what's new in the biohacking world with Dave Asprey?
Well, I love what you're doing here. Fasting is a big thing. When I did the Bulletproof diet about 10 years ago, intermittent fasting was built right in there. And so was cyclical ketosis. And since that time, it has just become more and more and more of something that not just crazy early cutting edge biohackers do, but something that everyone realizes they can do. You know, you wake up, you don't really want breakfast, but you're supposed to have breakfast. What if you skipped it? You know, what if you did intermittent fasting? So I think it's crossed over, much like the keto diet has crossed over, so that people are doing it just because it works, not because they're fascinated by the science and they wanted to see what would happen, which is more
but
how I
let's just say
learned.
they don't do it. Let's just say, you buy into the 3 meals a day that mom told you about, dad told you about, and that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That should be cereal, pretty much high carbohydrate.
Oh.
What's your sense is the downside for that?
Well, it's a downside that I lived. I used to weigh 300 pounds. And I'm, late 40s, and I was probably 30% body fat. I'm 10.1% body fat, and I exercise less than most people listening. Not that I don't get exercise, I do. It's just very targeted, and I'm okay. Like I'm not a balloon animal bodybuilder. I'm not a triathlete. Nothing like that. It's because I do intermittent fasting every day. Actually, not every day. Most days. You want to cycle it sometimes. And I do some other fasting, and I choose the types of foods. You and I are in alignment on that. And magically, I'm younger now from a measured artery perspective. When you look at how your arteries function, my brain is younger. Everything works better than it did before, and it doesn't take a lot to stay lean. And if I could do that as a 300-pounder, I'm pretty sure most people who've never hit that weight are going to have an easier time than I did. And that's why I love it that you're talking to 8,000 people about fasting. Thank you.
Well, I think that there's a large group of people who are wanting to make connection, first of all, in these troubled times, and secondly, we've been really kind of pulling the levers on intermittent fasting and fasting in general in terms of immune amplification. But maybe Dave, you could talk to us for a second about the notion of intermittent fasting and fasting in general, and how that relates to kind of the watchword of the paleo movement. In other words, how does it relate to gene expression?
Well, we have so many genes that are turned off. And when we do fasting, it turns on genes that do things like increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And one of my books was all about the brain and mitochondria in the brain. The largest biohack you can do if you want to have a brain that's young as you age, as you well know. I mean, here I am. You're a medical doctor. I'm an unlicensed biohacker. But this is more sharing for your listeners.
Is there a license to be a biohacker?
No, that's why I'm an unlicensed one. But I'm just saying you already know all this if I'm saying. The idea, though, is that if you can make your brain grow neurons or nerves in general like it did when you were young, you can have a young person's brain. And of course, you need blood flow and you need the right fats to build the membranes. It's not just a one thing, but BDNF is a massive thing. And when you fast, it turns on BDNF. And ketosis turns on BDNF. And there's herbs and there's also things that most of us eat when we eat that reduce brain growth. So a lot of times people don't see this when they're fasting, or they don't think about it. Look, you have some stuff that's good and some stuff that's bad. When you start fasting, you eat nothing bad. And when you eat nothing bad, maybe that's going to do more good than the fact that you're skipping some of the good things. So it's reducing the toxin load from your daily food that might be a part of that effect. And I think for BDNF, it is a part of the effect.
So all of a sudden your body has been challenged by a stress saying, oh my gosh, there's no food. So what does that tell our genome? What is it telling us we need to do, and what is it amplifying?
Well, one of the things that our body will do is it'll say, oh, there's plenty of food. Let's just keep on building stuff and just using food. And when it says, oh, I have to conserve, it says, all right, first, let's burn off any extra carbs that we've got stored for short-term use. And this is why people who joined your fasting challenge, especially if they went lower carb, they probably lost 5 to 7 pounds. Because that sugar that your body stores is glucose, it stores glycogen, and each molecule of that has a couple molecules of water. So all of a sudden you wake up in the morning, you're like, yeah, look at that. I don't have any love handles this morning. I haven't been like that for a while. My cellulite just went down. It's because you dropped some water. That's pretty cool. And then you say, what happens next? Well, the body says, all right, I've got to start turning on my ability to produce carbohydrates for things like the glial cells in my brain. How do I do that? By something called gluconeogenesis. And you can do that by turning protein that you eat into carbs. You're not eating protein, you're fasting. So what's it going to do? Oh, it's going to start burning up proteins that you didn't need in your cells. Yeah, it's going to do that. And those proteins that you didn't need in your cells, there might be a little bit of muscle mass in there, but more likely what it is it's dysfunctional proteins in your cells. It's even the cells in a process called autophagy, the cells that your body didn't need. I call them zombie cells in my last aging book. They're sitting there, they're not doing much, right? They're not dead, but they're not alive. They're making free radicals. And the body says, well, you're not necessary. And now that I'm in a famine situation, I'm going to just go through and kind of clean it up. I'm going to search around to see what I can use to make building blocks. And that process of searching around and cleaning things up makes you actually live longer, but it makes you feel much better. So turning on those genes for survival to tell your body burn fat and burn junk protein that's floating around inside your cells and get rid of the weak cells. That's why fasting is so regenerative. And the big thing, though, is a lot of people associate it with suffering. I'm telling you, if you skip breakfast and have coffee instead of breakfast without sugar and milk and cream and all that crap in there, you know what? You're not going to suffer. You'll be okay.
Yeah, I often get a kick out of people saying, I just have coffee in the morning. Well, where do you get it? Well, I get it at a certain place. I drive
the big green logo of death.
Yeah, and you know, is it a coffee? Well, yeah, there's coffee in it. It's a frappuccino or something like that. That has, I think, 64 grams or 50 to 60 grams of sugar or something like that, which is really more sugar, more carbs than you need in an entire day. But they're thinking, yeah, I'm going to go into ketosis because all I had this morning was coffee. So I wanted just to point out that this notion of autophagy, beyond the fact that it's a good thing for ridding the body of defective proteins, accumulants within the cell that may be defective, the body actually does this so that it's first able to use the garbage, if you will, burning the garbage first before we start to sacrifice our muscle, which we seem to need. We don't want to degrade our muscle because then how are we going to track down the animal to kill, in other words, to have the next meal? So tell us a little bit more about this idea of ketosis, and you've written so much about it over the years. What can we do aside from being on a ketogenic diet? What can we add into our diets to enhance our ability to make ketones?
This is such a good question. And you've written some fantastic books on these concepts as well. And so I'm just going to encourage everyone you listening to this stuff, if you haven't read Dr. Perlmutter's books, I have read his books. People send me books all the time. You get the same thing. You get stacks of books in the mail for people helping you read them. I actually read your books, which sometimes you just can't.
I better write another one then.
Because they're worth it. So the idea of what do you do in ketosis? You cover some of this where you don't want to be doing what's called dirty keto. And in the Bulletproof diet, years ago, I wrote this book because I had lost 50 pounds on a ketogenic diet. And this is a ketogenic diet that came about, in 1972, the year I was born. And it's called the Atkins diet. The problem is you could eat junk protein and you could eat junk damaged fats and you could eat artificial sweeteners. And you'll lose half your weight in the first little while. So you have 100 pounds to lose, you lose that 50 pounds, and the rest of it sticks around forever because you're inflamed. And it's how do you tackle inflammation and ketosis together? Well, that comes down to following your recommendations, following mine. Don't eat grains. They actually cause inflammation, and inflammation is part of obesity. But even aside from that, if you don't want to feel the pain of going into ketosis, like when I first started trying this in the 90s, man, you say, I'm going to go in ketosis, just this whole week is going to be wrecked. I'm going to smell bad. I'm going to get really bad breath. I'm going to feel awful. I'm going to get keto flu, they call it. Well, it turns out you don't really have to do that because you can use MCT oil, which is something that I've very much popularized. And now it's become a big part of the keto movement. And I know you have a great MCT oil. And the idea behind MCT oil is that the body directly converts it into ketones, even if you're just starting a fast. So every time I start my fasting, especially a multi-day fast, that first morning, and usually the first couple mornings, I have black coffee. And yes, I use my special Bulletproof coffee beans, et cetera, et cetera. But coffee itself doubles ketone production. And this is almost not even talked about in most of the keto world. It's just the caffeine in there does that. Coffee has other benefits aside from that. So now I've doubled my ketone production after an 8-hour fast. That's called sleeping, right? We all fast every night for 8 hours and we don't die. So I know you can do 8 hours, right? And then in that, I put MCT oil, which is something that I invented, that combination, but you could take them separately, of course, right?
That's called Bulletproof coffee for all of our viewers.
Yeah. And you can add a dollop of grass-fed butter in there, but not cream or milk because they have enough protein and they have some other molecular things that make them not work as well. You blend it. It's important you blend it. You can just pour it in there with a slick of oil. It's not the same. And when you do that, your ketones go up, and there's a magic number. If you're using those, finger stick things that track your ketones,
Precision.
Yeah, Precision Extra. In fact, I might have some of those little things, little test strips with me right here.
Yeah.
What happens with that is if you can get your ketones up to these two magic numbers that a lot of people don't know about. You see the people new to keto, the dirty keto, like as long as it's not a carb, I'm going to eat it. Now, don't be one of those, right? You want to be selective and intelligent about it, but they'll say, my ketones are higher than yours. Like, no, let's talk about this for a minute. Now, Dr. Perlmutter, if I said my blood sugar is higher than yours, would you think I was winning because I had more energy than you?
It's all about, no pun intended, the sweet spot.
Well said. So with ketones, it's the same thing. Having super high ketones in your blood just means that you can't metabolize the ones you have because your metabolism isn't flexible enough to burn fat. Having super high blood sugar means you can't metabolize the carbs you just ate because your metabolism can't handle it for whatever reason. So with ketones, when you add MCT oil and coffee, you can get it up to this sweet spot, which is 0.5. A lot of people say, oh, you're not in ketosis unless you're at 0.8 or 1.
We're talking about specifically beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Well, we're talking here in the blood, the measure of ketones in the blood, right?
Okay.
Which is a measure.
What are you measuring?
These are with the blood stick, with the Precision Extra.
Beta-hydroxybutyrate.
Yeah, you're measuring beta-hydroxybutyrate in the blood. Okay. So you can take beta-hydroxybutyrate as a supplement. It has some downsides that I'm not.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Okay. I'm not a fan of it. I actually was about to launch a product and I pulled it off the shelf before I did it because I don't think it's healthy. But MCT oil converts directly into beta-hydroxybutyrate. It's a better solution and it's the one I've relied on for a long time. So when you do MCT oil and coffee, at least for me, my blood levels reliably go up to 0.5, even if I ate a whole bunch of sushi rice the night before, so I shouldn't be able to go in ketosis. And
I've had sushi with you and your kids, as you'll recall.
Exactly. And so it's not like you and I never eat carbs. We do it selectively. But that MCT oil, man, you suffer when you go from eating carbs to eating nothing. Because you're going to spend a couple of days of, but then you do this and all of a sudden when your levels go to 0.5, the two hormones that are causing your suffering change. And your ghrelin, your hunger hormone, it drops. And there's studies that show this. 0.5 is the magic number. It's actually 0.48. I'm just rounding up. But that's the magic number. And then the other one's CCK, which is the hormone that makes you full. It goes up. So all of a sudden you have this cup and you're like, wow, I stopped wanting food. And I didn't have a lack of energy when my blood sugar was lowering because I had beta-hydroxybutyrate, the MCT oil converted to it. And now magically you just go about your morning. You're nice to your coworkers. You're nice to your kids. You get everything done. You're not shaky and dizzy and all that stuff. It's just unnecessary. And you can do that when you're fasting and you're still fasting. And it works so well.
We still gain the benefits. We talk about beta-hydroxybutyrate as being this brain superfuel, which it is. But there's a lot being written and talked about in terms of beta-hydroxybutyrate actually acting as a gene expression modulator. Can we touch on that for just a moment?
Yes. This gets a little bit technical, but there's something called histone deacetylase. And ketones are shown in studies that most people haven't read. It sounds like you've definitely read them, that basically show that ketones are going to make it easier for you to express your genes and not overexpress some other ones through that HDAC pathway. And I believe this is one of the many reasons that ketones are fantastic for you. When I had a chance to interview a guy who studied with Hans Krebs, and you guys may have heard of the Krebs cycle, which is how we make ATP. It was cracking the code of the energy inside the body. Very important fundamental work for which there was a Nobel Prize awarded. Well, Professor Veach is a guy who studied ketones for 40 years, and I had the honor of being the last person to interview him publicly before he passed in his late 80s. We talked about some of this stuff there, and he's very specifically talked about the fact that he thought taking salts, the beta-hydroxybutyrate supplemental salts, was dangerous. And it was his knowledge, and I'm going to go someone who studied for 40 years, a specific topic. His comment there was that he thinks it's actually toxic for mitochondria, especially over long periods of time, is why I pulled the product I was about to launch. So
yeah, above all, do no harm. But there is I think there is some real obvious benefit to letting these derivatives manifest themselves in our bodies through the natural pathways that they're normally created.
Yes.
To do so with balance. But just for our viewers, there's a lot of product development going on in this whole area of beta-hydroxybutyrate, the esters versus the salts. And, I can't go to a conference and not see 10 different companies coming up with a new product. And, Dave, what I love about you is that what you just said, that, you realize that you probably could have put it on the market, and a lot of people might have done that and whatever. But super cool. I really honor that in you. And
thank you. I lost $40 million by not doing that.
Well,
I'll say I didn't make $40 million. I didn't actually lose it. But you know what? I'm totally happy with that, because you have to live with yourself if you put something out there knowing that it doesn't do what you want it to do. So that's okay.
We're going to do a crowdsource thing to help you out with that one.
Oh, I'm very comfortable. I'm doing well. But it's one of those things where literally I had it in the warehouse. I had the flavor sample, like the flavoring, the packaging design. And, that's quite expensive to do. And then I just looked at this. I said, I want ketones to go up, but I don't want them to go up in the wrong way. So I've just been 100% like, let's do MCT oil because it's via natural pathways. And 10 years later, I still think that's the right thing to do. Yeah. So I would just say, be cautious with using external manipulators that aren't using those correct pathways. It's sort of like saying, wow, I want my blood sugar to go up really, really high. So I'm just going to take, I'm going to inject it into my blood, or I'm going to do some weird thing nutritionally to pound it the way a bodybuilder might do to get your blood sugar really, really high. Maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I would say that MCT oil, of course, is a natural product. I mean, you get MCTs when you use coconut oil, for example. Mm-hmm. Concentration certainly is not as high a concentration as what you can buy on the shelf. A question from somebody saying, can you elaborate more on exogenous beta-hydroxybutyrate? Let me just say that I'm also similarly not keen on it. I think there's a big benefit of having your body go through the motions of being stressed to the point that your body thinks it needs to create beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that whole process, I think, that hormesis process is also doing some things to set the stage then for beta-hydroxybutyrate to do its magic. And I would also agree with the work of Dr. Veach and the concern that he had raised about salts. And I think, you know, tangentially, the other ways of actually administering beta-hydroxybutyrate, we've learned that time and time again. We've learned that manipulating a specific pathway in and of itself doesn't, this whole notion, the Western model of extracting the active ingredient. Let me be a little technical for just a moment. We know that one of the benefits of fasting, of course, activating AMP kinase, a specific hormone that then has a role to play in terms of initiating what you mentioned, autophagy. And you can do that with a drug, metformin. And I had this conversation the other day with Mark Hyman on the podcast, actually. And it turns out that metformin, while it can lower blood sugar and activate AMP kinase, has some significant things that you got to worry about, as opposed to stressing your body with a little bit of fasting. So we got a bunch of people who participated. And for many, I will say this is their first time fasting. It may not have been as easy as perhaps they wanted, which I think is a good thing. Because I said the ultimate first goal of this fast is to develop something, expand something in your body called gratitude. All the ketones, all the other stuff, really great, interesting. But I think just gratitude that we have access to the ability to eat foods when we think we need to and want to. But gosh, I have just so much gratitude that so many people jumped on and have changed their headspace now in terms of how they're seeing everything going on around them in the world. And, we're seeing kind of the need for that. So let me ask, let's change course. I just segued there, didn't mean to, but what's going on in your mind in terms of what you're seeing happening in the world right now?
Wow. You're a little psychic there on the gratitude front. I'm working on the late stages of my next book, which is about fasting. And the first time I fasted for 4 days was, I don't remember the year now, but it was a while ago. I did it in a cave in Sedona. A shaman dropped me off in the middle of the forest. And I said, all right, I want to explore being alone, and I want to explore having no food. Because as a former obese person, well, I was terrified of not having my 6 meals a day. And just the things you get growing up, being bullied and things like that, you're also like being alone, what would happen? So if you're lonely, you develop the habit of eating. I had metabolic dysregulation, and I certainly had some emotional eating. Most people have some of both, right? So I said, I'm just going to face it all head on. All at once in the desert with no one to help me, because then you can't cheat that way, right? And so I'm including that experience in the book because gratitude's a part of what happens when you sit in a cave for 4 days and you say, all right, what is there to think about? And you realize, I'm lucky I get to sit in a cave for 4 days, because a lot of people who, if I don't work for 4 days, I don't eat. And I look at all that experience and I take it to where I am now in the world around us. The social isolation is horribly destructive. Economic deprivation, according to the WHO, the people telling you to destroy your economy, it actually is one of the 10 most stressful things that humans can go through. There's death, birth, loss of your home, loss of your wealth. Well, those last two are happening all over the place, and also loneliness. Right? Isolation. So we're hitting 3 of the top 10 stressors from the WHO through the WHO's own things. And they know how many people can die of stress. So the antidote for stress, the one that I practice every night and that I teach my followers to do, is a gratitude exercise. And you've met my kids, and I do this with my kids every single night. It's like, hey, tell me 3 things you're grateful for today. Right? And it's that simple. And then, my 10-year-olds, I'm grateful we had steak, or I'm grateful for something. And every now and then it's really profound, and sometimes it's just a little thing. And that idea of going through with your kids, with your spouse, or just in your journal, every night before bed, that gratitude is the way to turn off the pain of social isolation, the stress of what's going on in the world around you. The other thing to do is turn off the news already. Like, that stuff is toxic. It's just like eating junk food, right? And if you were to do that, what you realize is, no one saw the news, but Monsanto / Bayer just got fined $10 billion for destroying our topsoil and causing cancer with Roundup. Did you guys miss the news? How could you miss that news? Well, it's because there were like riots and viruses and stuff like that, but there's actually good stuff going on.
It's on my Facebook page, that's for sure, in big bold letters.
Yeah, good deal. So everyone here saw it, but most of the world missed that one. And that was groundbreaking. It was a victory for the planet. So even the fact that we can be right here in multiple places doing video over a little tiny thing the size of a pack of cigarettes from our parents' generation, what the heck? Like, we live in this incredible world of abundance. And the other thing to think of that I would encourage people is, look, this virus is a short-term thing. You are going to be alive for a very long time. And what you do now is what you're doing for the rest of your life. So you can go through short periods of stress. And 1 year is short. Actually, it is. You're going to live to at least 100 if you're following your advice and my advice, because medicine is evolving. Nutrition is evolving because we know what to do. So we have a short-term hiccup, and it may be uncomfortable. You know what else is uncomfortable for a short period of time? Fasting, right? So you can do this. And to me, that's the most important thing, is just maintain a sense of gratitude and a sense of perspective, and zoom your clock back and say, wow, this is narrow, right? This is a bunch of weird stuff. But you know what? When people say it's a new normal, things will never go back to normal. Yeah, how'd that work in 1918? That was a real pandemic where like lots of people died, way, way more than we've had problems with now as a percentage of the world population. And you know what? Things went back to normal within 2 years. So it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge the notion of even using the term new normal. Normal is by definition transitory. It's dynamic. Yeah. So saying new normal, it is normal changes day to day. Averages changes. If average is normal, those things change. You said something interesting a while back, and that was, don't watch if you're watching too much news or if you're eating junk food. And I would submit that watching the news, fanning the flames of fear, amplifying the activity of your fear center, your amygdala, leads to impulsivity, meaning eat more junk food. So the more that you watch the news, now I'm not saying not be informed, remain informed, but the more you fan the flames of fear, the more you connect to the fear center in the brain, the amygdala, the more you distance yourself from the prefrontal cortex, the gratitude center, the more impulsive you become, the more you'll eat junk food, the higher level of inflammation you will have, the more you will activate the amygdala. So that becomes a feed-forward cycle. And we talked about that in Brainwash really quite extensively, that that's a habit. We need an off-ramp. We need a powerful off-ramp. And one great off-ramp is fasting. You can force it's one thing to do an act of omission or an act of commission. Either you make yourself do something, but it's a lot harder to make yourself not do something, and it's challenging to not eat. But at least it's defined. I'm not going to eat until tomorrow night dinner. And you're sticking to that. And lo and behold, as you've seen in so many of these comments, that people, it's been a revelation for many people who have fasted for the first time. Suddenly they are empowered, albeit for the short term, to make better decisions as it relates, yes, to the food that they eat, but also maybe in terms of, are they going to exercise tomorrow? Are they going to have better sleep habits? Might they engage meditation? Might they get out into nature? Might they keep a gratitude journal? All of these things can come together once you get your foot in the door. Once that door is opened a little bit, might be through fasting. It might be that you say, tonight, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. I'm not going to stay up and watch the news until midnight and then have a crappy night of sleep. Because the next day, your amygdala is 60% activated, and you're going to make bad decisions. So excited about your new book. When will we see that?
Oh, that'll come out in February. So there's still a little while. And if you go to ig-dave-asprey.com, you sign up. But I've done something else that's relevant for your audience that I think you may also be doing, but maybe not quite directly. There's stuff that you'd like to say, and you and I both have many friends, powerful, intelligent, world-changing medical friends who know stuff, but when they post about it, it gets censored by private companies. And I have limited what I say on social media because I don't want to get, they don't just censor you and put the thing on that says it's false, even if it's not. But what they do is they just stop showing your stuff to people. They silence you, but they don't really turn you all the way off. So if you're, getting 500 people to see it, now only 5 people see it. And like, there, see? So it's dirty and it's nasty. But the answer to that is email. So I actually created the Dave Asprey uncensored email. And I email people the stuff I can't say on my blog because Google will punish me. And I can't say on social media because the social media things punish me. So I would tell you guys, sign up for David's email if you're not signed up. I'd love it if you sign up for mine as well. And the idea there is you can get good information. And can I suggest 2 things for everyone listening?
Absolutely.
All right. If you were to go to your browser right now and change the default search engine to something called DuckDuckGo, you've probably never heard of them. So you've done it. Guys, I used to go to Google and I'd say, hey, I want to know about fasting or something. And then I would get the latest things everyone was paying attention to. And you could really get the good science and the good advice. And you go there now and it's all ads. And the rest of it is basically garbage from pharmaceutical companies. And there's nothing there. And if you switch to DuckDuckGo, the internet starts to work again. So it's not about protecting your privacy, which it does do, but it's just more that you'll actually see real results instead of filtered results based on what they want you to think. And this isn't a conspiracy theory kind of thing. Just do both queries. You get better results every time from DuckDuckGo.
Well, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people are commenting right now that they are doing that, but there have been several questions. Again, people want to sign up for your newsletter. So how do they do that?
Go to daveasprey.com/uncensored. And you can just put your email in there. I send out, here's the podcast I'm doing, but here's the stuff I'm thinking about that I'm not going to put on the blog. And I know that you're doing some of the things too, but I'll tell you guys, likewise, now is the time to go back to what you might have done 10 years ago, which is make sure you sign up for emails and make sure that you actually read them, because this is where you're going to get the stuff that the internet generally won't let you see anymore. And the other thing that has changed my stress levels so much is I did a huge set of searching to find the best way to get news that wouldn't tweak on me. And there's an app you can get on your phone called News 360, and you tell it what you're interested in ahead of time. Google, they just decide what you're interested in. So if you accidentally click one article about how to braid your hair, you'll be reading about hair braiding for the rest of your life, even if you don't have any hair. So what's going on with News 360 is you tell it what you want and you thumbs up and you thumbs down every article. So very quickly, after a few days, it's trained to know what you want. So now I'm seeing the latest keto studies in my news again, because they got taken out from Facebook, they got taken out from Google, where I can't find them anymore. So now I feel like the richness of information and knowledge and good stuff in my world has come back, because when I take 10 minutes to read the news, it's the news that I chose, not the news that someone else chose for me because they wanted me to do something. So News 360, DuckDuckGo, I have no relationship with any of those companies. I just want my stuff to work and I want to keep learning. So as a way to enhance your fasting, do it. Hey, Lise.
Hi there. We'll see you soon.
Oh, can't wait to hang out with you guys.
You won't believe what I'm about to do.
Oh, what are you about
I'm about to go catch a red squirrel that got into our laundry house. So we need a live trap. So I'm just going to get the one above in the attic.
Just toss a laundry basket on him. That's easy.
Do what?
Toss a laundry basket on him. It's easy.
We're having such a time this year.
Behind the water heater.
Oh, God.
Oh.
We have, what's a woodchuck under this cottage, and it's just, I don't know.
Farm life is funny. People, I do Instagram lives with my sheep sometimes because I am on a small farm, for the reason that having fresh food is such a luxury and it's so important for your health and wellness. I mean, you and I have walked through the garden and we picked berries together. And this year we started feeding our local community. Some of our sheep and some of our pigs are at the local stores, a place called Health Essentials.
Well, you're going to have to find us a place out there, as you know.
Well, there are plenty, and the Canadian dollar is a lot lower than the American dollar. Come on up. The Canadians are remarkably stable and happy right now compared to a lot of the world. I'm very fortunate to live here.
And I'm a Canadian resident, so we're able to go there.
I have a Canadian green card, yeah.
There you go. Dave, I don't know why I just thought about this, but was it last year Thanksgiving, or maybe it was, when you and I were both out with the turkeys? I was here and you were, we'll have to leave it at that. You were going after him with an axe, but you were just kidding, because I think it was a plastic axe from your kids' Halloween.
Oh, it was a throwing axe. My 10 and 13-year-olds are allowed to throw axes because we live in a forest. Like, we're farmers, so they have to follow safety protocols. But you throw the axe, it sticks in the tree, and you feel like a caveman, like you really accomplished something. So we do that. And that said, we're both Americans, even though Canadian things. I moved up here because my wife's a medical doctor and her medical license would work up here. And I go to the U.S., at least I did before they closed the border, every week. So I have a great connection to being an American. I just realized that living up here is what worked best for my family, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, we understand. That's where we are. Anyhow, we love you, and thanks for joining us. And let me say thanks to everybody, all 8,000 of you who have participated in our time together, this fasting challenge. So super cool that we got to end our the whole challenge the entire week with you, Dave. So give our love to Lana. We miss you guys, but we're going to see you really soon.
Yes. David, it's always such a pleasure to see you, at least to see you, whether it's on Instagram, in person, wherever. I appreciate your work in the world. Most people listening have no idea the decades of knowledge, the breakthroughs, the pushing you've done. I see it and I honor it, and I just so appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, man. All the best. We'll talk soon. We're going to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.